Welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Collins from Shoreline PD in Washington. He has 27 years experience in law enforcement. Really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome to the show, Chief
Thank you.
Collins. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, you said to me offline that you have been a gym rat most of your career, and you
Yep.
talked about the importance of fitness.
Mhm.
How do you think that physical fitness has helped you to stay in this career for 27 years?
Uh, so once you get hired on, and you start getting involved in the career as a law enforcement officer. You start building the stresses of this job, and you have to have some kind of stress relief, and that comes in different forms for different people. Mine comes in a couple of different forms. One is the gym. I'm also a golfer, so the golf course is the other thing. And I look for activities that I can get into without thinking about the job, the stresses of the job, without thinking about the family, without thinking about the stresses of home life. It's just I'm in the gym and I'm there to do this particular exercise, and I'm trying to get a number of reps, and then I move to the next one. It's basically a thing, an activity that I can clear my mind and totally lose myself in, and not talk about or not think about the stresses that I've got to deal with when I get back to work, or bills at home, or kid activities when my kids were younger. It's just one of those things that you can take your mind off the common day-to-day stresses.
Yeah, and I think it's an important reminder too that you're human and you need ways to decompress, and
Yes.
to get out there. And
Yep.
as humans, we need that.
Yeah.
If we're inundated 100% of the time with anything that we're doing, that's really challenging.
Yeah.
What was your why? Did you have something where you're like, I'm doing this, I'm dedicated to this, I'm getting up? I know you told me that you get up in 4 o'clock in the morning every
Yeah.
day consistently. Was there a burning why for you to have that dedication and that motivation?
Yeah, everybody has seen the stereotypes of the overweight officer. There's cartoons out there, the donuts, the all the things that go along with that. And I remember as a younger officer with a long retired deputy now that at the end of his career had gotten pretty heavy, and it was the point where we all talk about rolling out his car. Well, the individual actually had to roll out, hit a knee, and then stand back up to get out of the old Crown Vics. And I thought to myself, not that he wasn't a capable officer, but um, I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be the guy that had to show up at a call and actually had to have um, uh, help to get out of my vehicle. So this job takes a toll on you, and if you don't take care of yourself, you'll find yourself in a situation one day where it's physically painful to do this job.
Right. Yeah, and I think, we talk a lot about, and obviously we'll talk about wellness, as we go throughout the podcast, but we talk a lot about longevity and what does that look like, and you can think about longevity in a lot of different perspectives. We can look at it as physical longevity, how can we make sure that you feel as good as possible for as long as possible and you're not rolling out of your car, you're not in pain
Yeah.
because you want to get to the end of this career and have retirement years ahead of
Yes.
you to where you can enjoy your life and go travel or go fishing or run around with your kids and grandkids or whatever it is that you want
Right.
to do. And then, of course, mental longevity as well. And, I would imagine that 27 years in this profession, you've seen a lot, you've
Mhm.
dealt with a lot of stress, and having outlets and things to be able to create that mental longevity. So, again, at the end of this career, you have years ahead of you.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of background into your career? I didn't ask for background yet. That was
Yeah.
by design, but I wanted to see if you could give us maybe the why behind entering into this career and then what 27 years looked like for you.
Yeah. As it's a pretty common story, I guess. Well, I did not grow up wanting to be a police officer. That was not my goal. I went into the military, and I'm a U.S. Navy vet, and I was stationed up here in Washington State. I originally grew up in the Deep South. I met a local girl here in Washington State, got married, and she wasn't moving, so I stayed up here. And she had family that was in the law enforcement career. And they thought, based on what they knew of me, that I would be a pretty good candidate. They gave me a little bit of advice of like what agencies to apply for. So I applied for my first agency back in 1997, which I guess I probably told myself how old I am. And uh, the sheriff's office was one of the first to offer me um, employment, but because I was still active duty Navy at the time, there was a delay, so I didn't actually start the academy till February of '99. Um, once I completed the academy, I went over to one of our unincorporated precincts out in southeast King County. And I spent a lot of my career as a patrol cop. Most people, most newer guys don't know this about me, but I spent 16 years as either a patrol cop or a detective before I even took a sergeant's exam, before I promoted up. Um, I highly encourage a lot of our younger guys not to promote up too fast. We're a large agency. For those that aren't familiar with the King County Sheriff's Office, when we're fully staffed, we have almost 800 commissioned deputies. There's a lot to do here. And King County is the home of Seattle. So, I mean, it's a very, it can be a very varied career for people. There's a lot of opportunity. And I think it's very wise for young deputies to take advantage of the opportunities that are here in this career. I mean, one day you could be working out in the sticks, getting cows off the road. The other days you could be working our metro or transit, working in downtown Seattle, working in a city like Shoreline, which is directly north of Seattle. So it's a very urban, suburban type environment. There's a lot of different types of policing that can be done here.
Yeah.
And I highly encourage these guys to take advantage of these opportunities. Um, I, I wanted to take advantage of those opportunities, so I took a lot of time doing. I trained a bunch of new deputies. I spent probably 10 years of my career training deputies on the street. I was a detective in our anti-terrorism unit that was part of our transit contract downtown. Learned a lot there. Did some transit policing also, which is a little bit separate of that. So, like I said, I spent a lot of time just kind of enjoying being a street cop because I don't think anybody joins this profession to go into supervision or to management. We all join to, drive cars and arrest uh, folks that are committing crimes and doing the job of a police officer. And then about mid-career, I had a couple of mentors that got a hold of me and said, "You really ought to start thinking about doing the supervision thing to kind of give back to the department, use your experience to help mentor the next generation of deputies." So I did, and I spent about 5 years as a sergeant. I did a couple of different duty assignments. I was a PTO sergeant for a while. I was also an administrative sergeant for one of our contracts, which is for a smaller contract, the admin sergeant that kind of acts as an assistant chief. So you're dealing with budgets and community meetings and legislators and elected officials and things. And which moved me into my next stage because after that, one of the mentors I had that was the captain slash contract city chief for one of our smaller contracts. He was going to retire, and he kind of set me up to get into that position. So he encouraged me to take the captain's test. I did, and it wasn't a smooth transition into contract city because I actually wind up working in another contract for a while as an administrative captain. And then I was the special operations commander for the sheriff's office for a while. And then I finally was able to get into a contract city chief position, but it took a little bit.
Yeah.
I did that for the city of Maple Valley, which is one of our contracts. So I was chief of police there for 2.5-ish years. And then I was reached out to about the city of Shoreline. The former chief here at City of Shoreline was moving up to be a division chief of the sheriff's office. She thought I would be a very good fit for this city. We had some conversations. Um, I don't live really close to this city, so it took a little bit of talking to about doing the commute to get up here. Um, it was a great it was a great decision to actually decide to put in. And when I was selected, coming up here to the city of Shoreline, it's been a great fit for me. So,
Love it. I agree with you with what you said about um, really learning and developing. I don't think that there's anything that beats experience and time.
right,
And the more you do things, the more you can specialize in things, then the better you're going to be. But then also the more you can teach other people. How do you think that training the younger generation helped to develop your skills even more? And especially as you entered into leadership, do you think that being able to train people helped you?
yeah, oh, definitely. I think so. I think there's a lot of times people get into training and then they don't realize how much they don't actually know. I think I learned more about this job training new folks than I did in any other position that I've ever had in this department. Because if something strange is going to happen, it's going to happen. You have a recruit in your car. So, and you're the quasi leader. It's probably the first time you're going to have a leadership position in policing is when you're training new deputies or new officers, depending on your agency. And you learn to think on your feet. You learn that sometimes you have to eat a little crow and say, hey, I don't know this, and we're gonna have to figure it out. So it's a good learning experience for both of you. And then it gives you an opportunity to realize that people have different styles of how they do things. Just because this is the way you do it doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way to do it. And I've had some creative solutions come up from training new deputies that, I didn't think about that and it works. So um, let's try it. And I do think it makes you a more well-rounded leader as you start moving up the chain. Um, it also makes you realize that not everybody you work with is going to think alike. We're not all from the same mold, and it gives you the opportunity to work with people that are different than you.
I
So,
think it's so humbling. I've had that experience before where you realize that maybe you don't know everything that you thought you knew, or maybe you're not as good at teaching something as you are at doing something
right,
sometimes. Like having those teaching skills is a whole nother skill set in itself. And teaching beginners is so much harder than
right,
teaching more advanced people, right? Because more
right,
advanced people know what's going on. And someone who's like brand new to this, career, or when I
yeah,
was training people, it was like, wow, you really have to know how to dissect things, how to
yeah,
break them down. You have to learn effective communication skills. And to your
yeah,
point, if you're
mhm,
training multiple people, they're all going to learn in different ways. So you have to learn how to say that one thing 100 different ways. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
it does develop you. But what a cool sentiment to say, like, that you were able to learn from the people you were training.
yeah,
And I think that that is such a good skill set to have, just in life in general, but in leadership as well, to say, I can learn something from everybody and I'm going to have a learner's mindset. And if I don't know something, I'm going to say, I don't know. And then
right,
I'm going to figure out what it is. And then I'm going to learn and grow and develop myself and the
right,
people I'm training on top of that. Because I do think that sometimes, and it's maybe ego, like where we're like, okay, we're the trainer now. They're going to listen to me. I know everything. I'm the expert. But for you to walk in and be like, I am the expert and I do know how to do these things, but I don't know everything. And,
right,
you have value too. And you might be able to teach me a thing or two as well. And I'm open to it.
right, right. Everybody brings their own skill sets to this job. I think believe sometimes young trainers make the mistake of you have to be your buddy with your recruit. And I'm like, I still tell this to my trainers. Um, you're going to work with different personalities that come into your car. You guys don't have to be friends, but you have to be able to still train this person and make sure that they're able to do this job safely. They're able to write a good report that can be prosecuted, and that they're going to be able to find the answer when the answer is not really available for them. And if you could train them to do those three things, then they're probably going to be successful in this career. Nowhere in that sentiment is being a buddy with this person. If it works out, you create a close friendship, and believe me, I've had close relationships with people that have trained me, years ago. Um, but you're going to find out that not everybody's your cup of tea. You still have to work with that person. You still have to train that person because there's a lot of money that's been invested in that person. There's a lot of time and energy that's been invested in that person. And what I find sometimes trainers don't realize that if that person doesn't get through the program for some reason, That's not necessarily a reflection on them. That may be a reflection on you as a trainer.
Mm,
So that's one of the mindsets that I've always are constantly looking at with myself and with the few people that work for me is what did we do to make this person successful, and did we fail somewhere?
yeah, no, I like that. And I think self-assessment is so important. And there's this guy that goes around and he says everything's your fault. Have you heard this before?
No.
And he's a little aggressive with it, but I kind of take that to heart. You know, whenever something happens where maybe it necessarily wasn't my fault, but like as a leader or, as a trainer, was it your fault?
Right.
Because it was your responsibility. So you start to do this, a little bit of self-assessment to
Yep.
understand where were my shortcomings and where could I have maybe done better. So I really like that. I did have a question for you, and we didn't talk about this offline at all, but I'm really curious because you had um, a recommendation to stay in patrol or try to learn and be like kind of boots on the ground for as long as you can and learn as much as you can before entering into leadership.
Mhm.
Through conversations that I've had, it's been challenging for a lot of departments because we have a lot of people who are retiring from leadership, and
Yep.
the workforce is so young that it's almost like they're being forced to kind of speed up everything to get everyone into these leadership roles to fill in those blanks.
Mhm.
Are you guys seeing that, or what are your insights on, still being able to train and develop the younger generation,
Mhm.
but also having, leadership roles that need to be filled, but maybe you don't have the experience yet to fill them? What does that look like training wise?
So yeah, we have so because of um, the and police work is cyclical because of the cycle we're in right now, and there's a lot of experience that are hitting the door. My generation is looking at the door, and then there's and for our agency, there's kind of like a smaller middle, and then there's a large new uh, portion of our staffing that are 5 years or less.
Yeah.
And yes, we do have some of those 5 year or less that are starting to look at taking the sergeant supervisor. Um, are they capable of doing the job? Yes. In many aspects, they are capable of doing the job. Are they going to have more growing pains because they didn't have that breadth of experience on the street? Yes, they are. And that is something that as captains that work under me, they have to mentor their sergeants. They have to be aware of that. If you have a young sergeant that doesn't have that breadth of experience, they're going to have probably a different type of issue than somebody who was like me, who had 16 years on before they became a sergeant.
Sure.
Um, Unfortunately, that's just where we're at right now. Like I said, for the sheriff's office department wide, we're down almost 90 bodies. For an agency our size, that's 10% of our staffing, or actually about 12% of our staffing. So, yeah, we have those challenges there with younger folks taking on supervisory roles. Um, is it preferable? No. But the one thing I've learned over the years is most cops are very adaptable. We'll figure out how to do the job and get it done, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, I really like that you said like it's a team mentality.
Yep.
It's like we understand that maybe they don't have as many years, but they're capable, they're
Yep.
willing to learn, and we're willing to mentor them and make sure that they have the resources that they need to be successful. So,
Yep.
kind of coming together as a team to make sure that like you guys can move
Mhm.
the agency forward in the
Yep.
ways that you need to. So
Right.
cool. Thank you. You had said to me offline that, you've seen what this job can do to people and that you've seen friends deteriorate because of this job.
Mhm.
What did you see?
Uh, well, the thing is, it kind of goes back to stress relief. I mean, the thing is, there's positive stress reliefs and there's negative stress reliefs. And we've all seen it. You get alcohol that winds up becoming a big portion of somebody's life. You get marital issues that wind up festering for a long period of time, resulting in sometimes in divorces, which creates a different kind of stress because it's hard to leave home at home when that's what you're thinking about because you're going through a very nasty divorce and you still have to do your job every day. And I'll be flat out honest. This job changed you. You're not the same person coming out that you came in. When you start working in this profession, you're dealing with the worst day of most people's lives, and you're doing it multiple times a day, and that just compounds over years and years and years and years of doing police work. Um, that's that's hard, and dealing with that is hard. And then sometimes we don't look for the right structures to help support us. We don't look for the right type of help, peer support that we need. And instead, we turn to sometimes negative influences.
Yeah.
And that can be both uh, people and outside influences like alcohol,
Yeah.
drug.
Well, and I can completely relate to that.
Yeah.
I had my own experiences where I had undealt with trauma and, stuff I'd gone through in my life. And I know what it's like to want to escape and numb and avoid and not deal with the thing. And I love that you said people,
Mhm.
because I think we so often we hear the things, like we hear alcohol or gambling
Mhm.
or overspending, going shopping and spending all your money because you're getting
Right.
the quick dopamine. And
Right.
um, but I don't know if I've ever had anyone say people. And
Mhm.
that resonated with me because I do think that you start to surround yourself with people who are going to support your decisions and
Mhm.
your habits. And if you are already going down a path of least resistance, and that's what I always call that, because
Mhm.
for me, and it's interesting because I think that it's almost like this reverse psychology thing. We think that we're strong, and so we're just going to go drink and not
Right.
deal with it. And that
Right.
makes us tough. But
Right.
that's really the path of least resistance. That's
Yeah.
the easy path,
Yeah.
right? But if we're already choosing those things, then we don't want to surround ourselves with people that are going to like call us out and
Right. Right.
that are have their lives together. We're going to surround ourselves with the people who are going to support those decisions that we're making, and that's that kind of spiral effect that happens. So, um, I because I have experience with
Mhm.
what that looks like,
Mhm.
I can completely empathize with someone who does that and who chooses that path. But in the same token, I also know what it's like to deal with your stuff, and that's really hard,
Yeah.
especially if you have years and years of trauma and for you guys,
Yeah.
critical incidents and the things that you're seeing in the community and, people's worst days and, um, to sit down and process those things is really difficult, but it's necessary, if you
Yeah.
want to start, taking that healthier path.
Mhm.
Was there a specific time where you looked around or you had an experience where you're like, that's not going to be me. Like I'm not going to choose those paths. Like I'm going to keep going in this direction of fitness and wellness.
Yeah. I've got, I've got a pretty strong wife. The thing is, we were married prior for law enforcement, so she's been a part of this journey the entire time, which is not the norm for a lot of police officers that come into this profession. It's fine. I've had a buddy of mine talk about this before. So I was in the Navy, and then and then I became a cop. Which I mean, you can look it up. Probably has two of the highest divorce rates statistic wise.
Mhm.
And I've been with my wife now almost 30 years. So she's seen it all. Um, and what I, I think I'm lucky in that way because she supports a lot of this stuff. I don't tell her everything that happens on the job, but I do decompress quite a bit with some things that have happened on the job over the years. We also have a very strong faith-based life that has helped with a lot of processing of things that you wind up dealing with. I would tell you it's not perfect. It's not a perfect journey. But having that support system in your life is very it's huge. Um, you look at it this way, the people in your life that are going to hold you accountable are going to be your best allies. You don't realize it at the time. You probably resent them a little bit for holding you accountable, but in the long run, they are your closer allies. The ones that are going to enable you, it's they're the ones that's going to make you have downfalls in this career and maybe ultimately fail in this career.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I definitely had a period of my life where I didn't want to surround myself with people who are going to call me out
Yeah.
because, you don't want that. You want
Yeah.
people who are going to enable you and support you. But I agree. I think that you need people in your circle who want you to win. I think that that's important. Like people who genuinely care about you and want you to win and are going to call you out if you're, making a mistake or if they start to see some of those changes in you and poor decision making. I had one chief on here and this stuck with me. They said that constructive feedback is an investment in that person. And so, if you have someone in your circle that wants you to win, that cares about you, and they come up to you and they give you that feedback, it's them investing their time and their energy and their love into you winning and
Right.
succeeding. So I think sometimes we get so defensive with that, but really it's an act of love.
Hmm. Absolutely. The thing is when you have that person in your life that is keeping you on that straight and narrow, um, like you said earlier, it's because they want you to win. They want to see you succeed. And believe me, that you'll find out the people in your life that want you to succeed. You'll find out pretty quickly, especially when things are not going well,
Mm.
because there's just as many people out there that want to see you fail. So
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting you said that because I've actually I think the more um, wins I've had in my life, the more I've seen who my real friends are
yeah,
because it's you start to see the people who don't want to see you win.
yeah,
They start to like judge you or try to level set you and kind of bring you down to their level. So it is really interesting, like different phases of your life where you start to see who's really in your corner.
yeah.
Um, you said that law enforcement had one of the highest divorce rates. I think actually fire has you guys beat, so that's good.
They
But what is the secret? We know that home wellness is important. What advice would you give to maybe someone who's earlier in their career when it comes to home wellness and
yeah.
being able to communicate with your partner or to build that strong family unit? And how important do you think that is for the success of your career?
Well, I could tell you my mistakes, I guess, which would probably be easier. Don't cut them out of your work life.
Mm.
I tried to do that a lot when younger in our marriage, raising kids and not bringing the job home, and then you internalize a lot of stuff. Um, yeah, it's fine to talk with your work buddies and stuff about this stuff, but it's not the same as when you're talking to your spouse about it, because you're not going to be vulnerable with your work buddies. You're going to be vulnerable with your spouse or your significant other, um, and you need to get that stuff out. It's you tell when you start talking to these young guys, it's not normal to see dead bodies over and over again. It's not normal to see childhood abandonment, endangerment, abuse over and over again. It's not normal to see gruesome car accidents multiple times throughout your career. Um, you need somebody to talk to, whether that's your spouse or a professional. You can talk to your buddies about it, but again, that vulnerability is very rarely going to happen in a group of cops because the the stereotype is we can't be vulnerable around other cops. I
Mm.
think that's changing. I really do think that's changing with the current generation. But I'm gonna tell you right now, with my generation, it's it's still pretty standard. So
Yeah. How do you convey the message? I don't want to say convince because I,
yeah,
I think that's really hard to like convince people of stuff, but how do you convey the message that vulnerability is strength?
yeah. Um, I can only use the examples that I have for myself.
Hmm.
I feel that I've had a pretty successful career. I tell them when somebody wants to talk about this particular subject, these are the mistakes I made. This is what I did to overcome them. This is how I got through this challenge. It I generally talk to people through examples. That's just the way my brain works. So when a young deputy comes up and they're saying, "Hey, chief, what do you think of this?" I can give them my experiences. This is how I dealt with it.
Yeah.
This is my recommendation. Um, you know, don't forget that um, you were always a cop. You had a life outside of police work before you became a police officer. Try to refocus and keep that part of your life. It's hard. It's really hard because when we get in here, we just want to be part of the team, and you start hanging out with nothing but cops, and there's nothing wrong with that from time to time. But remember, there's a life outside this, and make sure you do keep that life outside of this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really like that you said that, communication was a key piece of that. And I do agree. I think that the way that you talk to someone who's really close to you, who's your
Mhm.
partner, is going to be so different. And
Mhm.
the one thing that I've learned, and again, I haven't been perfect in any of this stuff either, but when it comes to, um, relationships, it's as soon as you start seeing the other person as, like the opposition, right? Like it's like
Mhm.
you against each other.
Right, right.
Like that is where things really go
Yep.
south fast. And so
Mhm.
what I heard when you were talking is like you and your wife are a team.
Mhm.
You come together and she's holding you accountable, but she's also your sounding board and she's being understanding of these things and you're communicating and you're willing to be vulnerable and communicate with her. And to me, like that's what a team unit does. And if
Mhm.
you can start to think it's you against the world, you two against the
Yep.
world, not you two
Yep.
against each other,
Yep.
then that at least creates a stronger foundation for success. Doesn't mean that every marriage is going to be successful.
Yep.
No, but it creates a stronger foundation. I think that as soon as you start to have that divide where it's you against each other, it's really
Yep.
hard to come back from that.
Yeah. And this this career is difficult enough without home life difficulties.
Yeah.
So whatever you can do to mitigate that, I recommend you do it. And that's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. You had told me that you talked to younger cops about not losing themselves. And you had
Mhm.
mentioned this a couple times that this job changes you. You come into this career and you leave a
Yep.
different person. And I would imagine for good and bad, you go through a lot of hard things, that maybe change you on that level, but then you also see some really heroic things and you learn a lot and you develop your skills over time. And what do you think when you said that? Like, what does losing yourself look like?
Yeah.
And what do you think are the tools and resources that, the younger generation can use to be proactive about not losing themselves?
Yeah. So I'm going to quote a friend of mine who actually still works there. He had a great perspective on this. You may love the job, it will never love you back. And
Mm.
the only thing this place owes you is a check every 2 weeks and a pension if you stay long enough. So, um, and if you, the job is great. It's like no other job in the world. You have a front row seat to humanity. Um, but there is another life out there. And that's one of the things that you have to keep reminding young folks when they get in this because they want to be everything about being a police officer.
Yeah.
I see with some of the newer generation that they do have outside interests. One of the things that I've noticed is so for me, when I started this job, I couldn't wait to get off of our phase 2 training, field training, and get out on my own because then I could start working overtime. I have found that with some of our younger folks like that, that is not a priority for them. Their time off is more of a priority for them,
Yeah.
which is very good. It's a different mentality because they are prioritizing some of their off time and their personal time. Um, I, I I would encourage them. I said, understand that yes, there's times where you need to be a team player and probably pick up some overtime shifts to help out your partners. But I like the fact that you're prioritizing your off time because that off time is kind of precious. It is the time to get away from the job, to spend that time with your family, to spend that time with friends, to spend that time pursuing a hobby or spend that time pursuing an education outside of law enforcement, doing that lifelong learning thing. Um, Having those outside interests will help you stay well-rounded. It'll help you stay balanced. It'll help you realize that not everybody in the world is somebody that you have to deal with some of the individuals that we have to deal with here in police work. There is very nice, normal people out there. So,
I like the idea of staying grounded.
yeah.
And I had an experience in my life where I saw firsthand kind of what you said about like the job maybe doesn't love you back as much.
Yeah.
And it was really humbling for
Mhm.
me because in my career, I was kind of on the up and up in what I was doing,
Mhm.
um and I had like reached this point that I was really proud of and I was really
Mhm.
excited. I had developed my skills and I had worked really hard and I had rubbed two pennies together for years and years and years and finally had reached this point where I felt like I had like quote unquote made it,
Mhm.
in my career and um I sacrificed
Mhm.
my life, my family, my home life. I
Mhm.
sacrificed a lot
Mhm.
and um I ended up stepping down from that space, and no one reached out.
Yeah.
Like zero
Yep.
people cared. No one asked me how I was doing. No one checked in. No one, and I had thought, what are they going to do without me?
Yep.
They're going to be so sad when I
Yeah.
leave. Like I
Yeah.
can't leave. I can't do this. Like I can't take the next step in my career and leave this part of it because
Yeah.
what is everyone going to do without me? It's like this maybe egotistical
Yeah.
thought process. And then when I did step away and it was a huge decision for me, I had a lot of anxiety and stress about it. And when I left,
Mhm.
no one cared. And it was like devastating to me, honestly. Like it was really heartbreaking. It was almost like this like ego death of like some
Yeah.
like where I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe I wasn't as valuable or as whatever. And it took me a while to kind of realize that like that's okay,
Yeah.
and there has to be something outside of that to catch you,
Yeah.
and because I had sacrificed everything, I felt like I had nothing at the
Mhm.
end of it. And the one thing I realized is you do not get that time back. And
Nope.
I had thought about this the other day. I was like, if I could be, I wouldn't say 21, maybe like if I could be 25
Yeah.
again, knowing what I know now,
Yeah.
like with like what my, like I would in a heartbeat, like go back to being 25.
Mhm.
And like I would love that because I think it's the time that you
Yeah.
never ever get back.
Yeah.
If I go back to 25, that means that like a lot of people who are in my life would still be there that
Mhm.
aren't here today. And
Right.
I could go back and prioritize them and spend that time with them. And I didn't do that. And
Right.
that is one of my biggest regrets in life is not prioritizing those things. And you do not get it back.
Yeah.
So, taking advantage of the time that you have now, even though you think you have unlimited amounts of time, you're going to blink and realize that it went like that. It's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah. I remember my first day like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And that was a long time ago. Yeah, one of the most humbling experiences you'll ever uh, experience is what you just mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, you look at somebody, so it doesn't matter what organization you're in. Pick chief, deputy chief, whatever. Pick whoever you want. The one that you think this guy runs the department. I don't know what we're going to do, but that guy retires or drops dead or whatever. The big machine keeps rolling. The
Yep.
911 calls keep getting answered. It keeps going on. When you retire, when you step away from this job, there will be some of your buddies that will miss you, but 10 years from down that road, there's going to be guys on the department that knew you. They're like, what was that guy's name?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a humbling experience, but it's just what happens.
Yeah.
So,
And I don't think it makes what you do less valuable. I
mm-mm.
think it just makes you understand that like there's so much more to the
Yep,
puzzle than you
yep,
think. And
yep,
when you put all of, I'm gonna be so cliche, but you put all
yep,
your eggs in one basket, it's like, and then you drop that basket or you lose that basket, then like what do you have on the other side of things? And so being able to prioritize other things that are important, especially your family,
mhm,
your friends, people
yeah,
who really mean something to you, because
yeah,
I'll tell you what, when you start to lose people, and you're like, wow,
yeah,
you know, maybe I shouldn't have taken that job and I should have been there. Or maybe I shouldn't have worked out overtime and I should have
yeah,
been there. So,
right, right.
um,
The
w-
goal is to get your 30 years back. You give 30 years to your whatever agency you work for. You want to make yourself when you walk out of here, you get your 30 years back. So,
yeah. Well, and I'm going to add to that because I've been on this kick lately is you want to have 30 years into retirement,
mm-hmm.
but you want to have your health intact.
Yep.
Like I think that so, and I'm guilty of this, talking about, we want you to get to the end of this career, and then
Mhm.
we want you to have as long as you had in the career in retirement. That's the
Mhm.
goal, right?
Right.
But what's the point if
Yeah.
physically
Right.
you're in so much pain that you can't move, you can't do the things that you want
Right.
to do.
Right.
What's the point if mentally you have 30 years of undealt trauma and stress, and now
Mhm.
mentally you're not in a good space, and so you
Right.
can't enjoy it?
Right.
What's the point if you have a heart attack 3 years into it, or
Right.
whatever it is, And so
Right.
I think
Right.
that we have to add, we might have 30 years
Mhm.
that you can live well.
Right.
Add the well to it. Like we want you to feel good for 30 years if
Right.
possible.
Right. Exactly.
I'll tell you right now, I don't want to live 30, 20, 30 years and feel terrible and
Right.
like not be able to move and all the things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
my last little bit before we sign off, you and I talked a little bit about how, um, maybe there's a lot of talking about wellness and
Mhm.
leadership. And
Mhm.
I always say that I think that there's kind of a three-part process for growth. And it's first awareness, and then
Mhm.
it's second education,
Mhm.
and then third is implementation.
Mhm.
And so, I think we've done a good job, at least in the wellness space, of saying,
Mhm.
okay, we understand some of the challenges. There's that awareness piece that like wellness is important and leadership is important. And then now there's this educational component of like, okay, well, what are the things that we can do? And
Mhm.
you kind of get stuck in that talking phase of like,
Mhm.
okay, like here's the education, here's the things that we need to do. We're going to talk about it a lot. And
Mhm.
then sometimes we miss that action or implementation
Right.
piece. What do you think still needs to be done or implemented when it comes to leadership and wellness? What is still missing?
So sometimes it's prioritization. I think the sheriff's office is doing better at prioritizing because the wellness discussion is not new. It seems to be new now because there's a lot of agencies talking about it. But I mean, some of these discussions started well over a decade ago with people recognizing there needs to be something outside just peer support for deputies and officers as they progress through this career. But like everything else, everything comes down to money sometimes. And you know, you show me where your budget priorities are, and I'll show you where your priorities are. And if you look at most law enforcement budgets, the first things that get cut is going to be training and wellness programs because um, you have to pay for salaries, you have to pay for cars, you have to pay for radios and equipment and things. So I think that's the biggest challenge when it comes to leadership is prioritizing wellness and realizing that it is an integral part of getting our people through their careers and not putting those programs on the chopping block so fast when there's a budgetary crunch. Yes, I understand that sometimes you're going to have to tighten your belt, but there's a lot of times that if you look at some of these county or city budgets, that's the first thing they cut completely out. And I believe that's to the detriment of the people.
Yeah. Well, and I really do believe that your people are your most
Yeah.
valuable asset,
Yeah.
and how can you support them? And I think sometimes and, we hear a lot of statistics, we hear a
Mm,
lot of metrics, and
mm,
I think when we get so involved in the numbers that we forget that these are actually people
yeah.
that we're talking about. We have to humanize that in some way and realize like, it's not necessarily cutting a wellness budget. It's cutting resources that you're giving to your people that are going to help your people be well and do the job well. And so I think sometimes, that's what I hear too, is we talk a lot about numbers and ROI and,
Mhm.
all these terms. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean for the people?
Right. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, if a wellness program can keep somebody on the job for a longer period of time, that's a benefit both for the individual employee and for the agency.
Exactly.
To me, that's a small investment to keep that person here.
100%. What words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career? And this can be in the context of wellness, in the context of leadership, maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier that would have helped you out, or something that you did that did help you out.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to what we talked about some earlier because people talk about it and you don't really realize it until you've done this job for a significant period of time. But this job is going to change you. There's nothing that you can do to prevent that. It's just like I said, what we see and what we deal with isn't normal. Embrace that. Understand that early on that it's going to change you, and then start setting up um, the stress relievers and the support system that you're going to need to move forward. If you do that earlier in your career, then maybe it doesn't wind up slapping you in the face 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road. Keep that family tight. Build those relationships. Realize that there's going to be some ups and downs. But also realize that quitting isn't an option. So if you do that early on in your career, I think it'll be a lot more successful for a lot more people.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and your words of wisdom and for coming on here and spending 45 minutes with me talking about wellness and leadership. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the invite. Uh, uh, More enjoyable than I thought.
Good. I told you time goes by so fast. I,
Yeah,
I feel like I could talk to you for another hour. I looked up and was like, oh, we're done. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate your time so much and we'll keep in touch.
All right, take care.
You too.